This is the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris DeGaulle.
Chris DeGaulle. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris DeGaulle.
I'm joined now by Chris DeGaulle.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris DeGaulle.
The Chris DeGaulle podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
All right, away we go. It's the 7th day of June. Welcome into the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast. Glad to have you here. It's a good one today. I think we're living through an incredibly important period of time. What do I mean by that? I explained the Tucker video. Episode 1 has been posted on Twitter. Going to explore what this really means. This is a show where I talk a little bit about the business of media. I don't mean to bore those of you who aren't interested in it, but I think this is a profound moment historically in the marketplace of ideas and conversation and the way you and I get news. So as a listener of this show, I suspect you share interest in that subject, and I'm going to give you a little bit of my background and my knowledge and my perspective on that. That's I don't know a lot about a lot, but one thing I do know is the broadcast business and the media business, and I think we're watching it being revolutionized right before our eyes. So going to get into that. Phil Klein is back with us. He's the former Attorney General of Kansas. He was one of the attorneys with the Amistad Project who was overseeing the election integrity battle in 2020. Remember the guy that was driving what he claimed were pallets of filled out ballots, huge thousands of pallets of ballots, driving them from New York to Pennsylvania. And then the trailer ultimately ends up going missing. You remember that guy? Remember that story? Well, there's been an Inspector General investigation from the United States Postal Service into the story. It actually validates a great deal of the story. Phil is back to kind of recount all of that. Not only do we have to worry about ballot harvesting and, Democrats voting a couple of months before Election Day, but we also have to be very mindful of chain of custody. When these ballots are sent in, where do they go? Who's counting them? Who's holding them? Who's collecting them? Phil is trying to sound the alarm on that issue as well. There's a lot to think about there, so we'll get into that. My friend Kevin Keatsman, host of Kevin Keatsman Has Issues, he and I talked yesterday about this LIV PGA merger. If you like golf, if you watch golf, if you play, I see some parallels actually to Twitter and what the LIV PGA merger was all about. And even if you're not into golf, I think you're going to find the subject matter interesting. Kevin, meanwhile, said some kind things about yours truly and this show, and he said it on his show yesterday. Some of the things I tweeted, shocker, made some people upset. They challenged my faith and my Christianity, so I wanted to explore some faith themes a little bit today. It's what we do here. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know, by the way, if you listen to this show with regularity, your comments, your 5-star reviews, and your written comments at Apple iTunes, you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the menu of shows. That's where you can leave a written review and give the 5 stars, or at Spotify. I can't tell you how important that is and how much that helps this show when you do that. So thanks if you can take a minute or two and leave a review or a 5-star review. I appreciate it. I also appreciate your support of the sponsors who make this show possible. And John Ruhlman is what we call the title sponsor. He's the name on the door. He's the guy that pays most of the bills around here, and I'm most appreciative to him. And I really do believe in what he does for his customers. I hope you're one. I personally know people that have called and saved thousands, literally, in one case, $2,000 a month. A gentleman I know, his family, he buys his own health insurance for his wife and his 2 children and him. One of his kids has special health needs, and because of it, he was paying an extraordinary amount of money monthly on his health insurance premiums. He makes one phone call. He gets better coverage for all 4 of them in the family, and he saved $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month. That's just stunning money. So whether you're a senior on a fixed income and you're buying a supplemental health program, call John Ruhlman. Reach out to usmedicalplan.com, usmedicalplan.com, and just ask, hey, you've got like 80 different private insurers out there. Here's what I pay. Here's the coverage I have. Can you do better? Maybe they say, you got an awesome plan. I can't do better. But most likely, they'll tell you they can save you 30 to 60% and get you better coverage. They're never going to put you in worse coverage just to make things cheaper. That's a promise too. John and his team really care about making sure, if God forbid you ever actually need your health insurance, you're fully covered, including extended hospital stays or extended illness coverage. In many cases, if you're a younger, healthier person in particular, you have no idea. Like, there are insurance plans that cost you very little monthly, but actually pay you when you use them. Let them explain. Give them a couple of minutes. 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321. usmedicalplan.com. Posting their hazy moon pictures last night. You been seeing everybody posting that? Pretty funny. Somebody, I can't remember who it was. Somebody just posted I couldn't figure out what I was looking at in one post. It looked like a big orange ball in the sky. Then I realized it was somebody taking a picture of the moon behind smoke, and they just wrote, "Thanks, Canada." And I was like, I didn't even know what that meant at first. And I was like, oh, that's right. There are wildfires burning to the north, and the jet stream is pushing all of this Canadian wildfire smoke down into the, if you want to call it, I guess, the eastern Midwest and a lot of the eastern seaboard. And so it's causing this kind of thick smoke and haze from, I don't know, basically like Ohio, parts of Ohio, all the way out to the shoreline and up and down the northeastern seaboard. So everybody's seeing this thing. Are you noticing it? Does it stand out to you or not?
Yeah, they were literally talking about it. I heard a news report yesterday, and I'm like, I don't see anything. This morning, literally, first thing, driving down the driveway, it looks like there's fog everywhere,
Yes.
but it's not. It's smoke.
And it if you have a nice clean car, it builds up ash and soot on your car, and you don't even realize it, and you forget, and then you're like, where did all this dirt and ash come from? It's soot from the fire. Dense acid smoke from Canadian wildfires shrouding much of the Northeast like a fog bank, as Fast Eddie said, filling the skies throughout the region last night and lingering through today. The smell's so evident, there's been a significant influx of 911 calls, as a matter of fact. People freaking out. Something's on fire! I don't know what, but I smell it! Would you call 911 when you smell a fire? Like, I feel like I have to physically see evidence of a fire before I call 911.
Yes, of course.
I smell a fire! Okay, where is it? I don't know, but it's burning! Anyway, the worst of it forecast for today, this afternoon, into this evening, says the National Weather Service. Red flag alerts, critical fire weather conditions, part of a dry spell that we happen to be going through, but that has nothing to do with us. No fires burning here. It's all to our north. Yeah, New York City just, they've got a live shot of New York City this morning on Fox, and it looks like London, like like Mary Poppins London, chimney. I mean, it's pretty dramatic looking. So that's what it is, just in case you don't know.
Great. Cory Bush is going to ban cars now.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, yeah, the day is short still. It's early, so who knows what will global warming be blamed on this ultimately somehow, if it hasn't already? I'm sure it will.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the lack of rain, the wildfires in Canada, of course.
I never understood how the wildfire component was blamed on warming. As if, never mind. I'm not going to get into it. That's not where I wanted to start. I want to start today with what is seismic shift. The first shot heard round the world on what is now the new media landscape. Maybe because we happen to be in media, I'm a little more attuned to this. I don't know, but I think I'm not wrong when I speak for most of us who pay attention to conservative issues, people who are conservative, people who like conservative programming. What we're watching is nothing short of a revolution in, I think it would be too short-sighted to say just conservative media. I think it's all of media. I think we are living through something extraordinary right before our eyes. I mean, literally this week and this month. And I'm talking about Tucker Carlson joining Twitter. This is something I don't think I could have ever really imagined, to be perfectly honest. When Elon Musk bought Twitter, I was kind of in my small brain thinking, oh, well, good. Now, those of us who are conservative, maybe we'll have a shot at being heard. That was my small brain. Elon Musk's brain, thankfully, is much bigger. And Elon Musk saw something more than just, I'm going to let conservatives start talking. He saw this as an opportunity to build a media empire. And I think that's what we're watching. And I actually think Twitter has gone from this thing that a lot of people maybe don't use and don't think about, and I still don't think most people use it. Given the response on places like Facebook, for instance, yesterday, when I referenced this, a lot of people still said, this almost makes me want to join Twitter. Almost. A lot of people still reluctant. So I'm mindful that to a lot of people, Twitter is still this foreign place that doesn't interest them, or they think it's, kind of a wackadoo out there place they don't want to give a lot of their time and energy. I respect that. And that hill has still got to be climbed by Elon. He's got to change the perception. And I think what he's done here yesterday is going to go a long way in doing so. He's partnered with Tucker. And does everybody understand that this is not just to Tucker Carlson's benefit? I think everybody's focused on Tucker leaving Fox, and Tucker's got a new video up on Twitter, and all good for Tucker. I think people are missing the business side of this story, and that would be a mistake. And the business side of this story is what Elon Musk is up to. Don't lose sight of what he's up to. Yesterday, after Tucker posted his first episode, which wound up being something like, I don't know, what was it? It wasn't quite a half hour, was it?
It was, I think, 10 minutes in total.
Yeah, that's it. It wasn't even 20 minutes. It was 10 minutes. I watched it. It was great. Very familiar. Tucker sitting there in a suit, what appeared to be like his rustic cabin setting or whatever. Camera quality was good. Had his own little graphic there. Tucker on Twitter. 10-minute monologue on this dam that broke in Ukraine, which we're going to get into in just a minute. People, rightly, are focused on the numbers, and they're stunning. I mean, this is, folks, this thing has now been posted. It was posted at 5 o'clock. It's timestamped 5 p.m. yesterday. As of right now, that's as I talk to you this morning, as I record this show, as we bring it to you, 53.3 million views. Fast Eddie. 53.3 million views since 5 p.m. last night.
That's incredible.
It's been retweeted 141,000 times. It's been quoted 16,000 times. It's been liked 500,000 times. And a lot of people would say, well, great for Tucker. Yes, this is great for Elon Musk, ladies and gentlemen. And somebody asked me, they go, I don't understand this. How does this work? This is not, because, again, we're all in the kind of the conventional media space where we go on a broadcast network like Fox, or we do a radio show like I've done for decades. And you're like, well, how does this work? It works in many ways the same way traditional media does. This is going to be about eyeballs. This is going to be about views and clicks, and ultimately, can you monetize that? Now, remember who Elon Musk hired to run this place. Elon doesn't want to be the hands-on day-to-day CEO of Twitter. He went in there to kind of bust some skulls, clean house. He's trying. Again, he's still got to weed out some people. I'm not convinced he's done so. He's still got some malcontent left-wingers within his organization that were trying to keep What Is a Woman, Matt Walsh's film, from being seen. He went in there and said, what are we doing here? And they said, well, sir, it violates our policy on this and such. He goes, the hell it does. Show the thing. And he pins it to his own Twitter account. Matt Walsh now has the biggest documentary in history because Elon Musk took to Twitter and pinned it up there. So Elon still has some malcontents and some left-wingers inside his ranks that I think have to be dealt with. I don't know that I'm convinced they will be. I'm still convinced a good number of people. And again, I don't mean to keep making this about me. Maybe it'd be better if I made it about somebody like Emerald Robinson, our friend, or whatever. While I do believe Elon Musk is sincerely committed to allowing people to speak freely on his platform, I don't think he knows the extent of the shadow banning and the limits that have been put on I don't know, maybe tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of users. And I include people like Emerald and people like me in that, but I don't, like, in the universe of Twitter, do I think Elon Musk has the time or inclination to know what's going on with my little account? Of course not. So I don't mean to make it about me, but it's obvious to me that someone or some things or some system inside Twitter still exists to keep people like me by the, I don't know how many, hundreds, thousands, who use certain words or regularly post certain content. There are still artificial governors on our account. I think this speech, not reach thing is still very much employed for a lot of us. Much smaller accounts, much bigger accounts than mine. There's still lots of people who aren't being seen by the number of people who actually follow them. And that's still an issue, and I don't know how he's going to fix that or if he ever can. That still frustrates me a little. But this is a bigger story, and so I don't mean to get lost in making this about that. Somebody asked me, I don't understand. Tucker concluded his comments yesterday by saying, hey, we're here on Twitter to bring you this product for as long as we believe Twitter. In fact, I don't know. Let's play a little of it first. Why don't we? His entire monologue focused around this dam break in Ukraine. And I hate to skip ahead, but I'm going to only to kind of make my point here this morning about the business of what's going on here. So let's go to that second clip. I don't know. Can you scoot in a little bit on that, Fast Eddie? I just kind of want to focus on kind of his last couple of minutes and what he says about the venue and what he's doing there, if possible. So this is Tucker's video now posted on Twitter. He's partnered with Elon Musk. This was about a 10-minute post. He says episode 1. He didn't seem to indicate how often they're going to do this, by the way, did he?
No, just like everything, it's almost cryptic. It's like, boom, he releases a video. It's like, oh, Tucker released something.
He said, well, he likened it to, well, I shouldn't bury the lead. I'll let him speak for himself. It's interesting how he framed this. Take a listen.
The bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft. The Pentagon has spent decades studying these otherworldly remains in order to build more technologically advanced
So he's wrapping up talking
systems.
about UFOs, and we'll get to that a little later,
That's what the
too.
former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth. Ran on a technology website called The Debrief, which you've probably never heard of. The Washington Post had that story, but decided not to run it. The New York Times, meanwhile, just pretended it never happened. On the front page of the New York Times website this morning, there were 5 stories about Ukraine, as well as 4 stories apiece about Donald Trump, trans people, and climate change, the usual lineup. There was nothing at all about how an alien species is flying hypersonic aircraft over our cities. Not one word. So if you're wondering why our country seems so dysfunctional, this is a big part of the reason. Nobody knows what's happening. A small group of people control access to all relevant information, and the rest of us don't know. We're allowed to yap all we want about racism, but go ahead and talk about something that really matters and see what happens. If you keep it up, they'll make you be quiet. Trust us. That's how they maintain control. When Western tourists first started traveling in large numbers to the Soviet Union in the early 1970s, they found that many Russians had a completely warped understanding of the United States. They thought that Americans lived in grinding poverty, in a state of perpetual race war, and were desperate to flee to the freedom and prosperity of the Eastern Bloc. They thought this because that's what they had been told. They had no way to know otherwise. The few Russians who understood what was really going on in the rest of the world had learned about it from listening to shortwave radio broadcasts, sometimes under the covers so the neighbors wouldn't hear. 50 years later, it is bewildering to consider the ironies here. We're the ones who live in ignorance now. The US government has managed to classify more than 1 billion so-called public documents. So at this point, we can't possibly know what our leaders are doing. We're not allowed to know. By definition, that is not a democracy. Yet it's fine with the media. Secrecy is a powerful tool of control. Stop asking how we got so rich. Here's another story about racism. Go eat each other. That's the program. That's how most of us now live here in the United States. Manipulated by lies, silenced by taboos. It is unhealthy and it's dehumanizing, and we're tired of it. As of today, we've come to Twitter, which we hope will be the shortwave radio under the blankets. We're told there are no gatekeepers here. If that turns out to be false, we'll leave. But in the meantime, we are grateful to be here. We'll be back with much more very soon.
Okay. Brilliant, as always. That's Tucker Carlson. 10 minutes in total. I just wanted you to hear the tail end of that because, as usual, he so beautifully summarizes where we are. From Tucker's perspective and the state of the media, brilliant, beautiful, poignant as he is. We are manipulated by lies. We are silenced by taboos. He says that we are basically a country without access to real information, and the only information that we're actually given is just to eat one another alive, shouting things like racism, phobia, homophobe, sexist, bigot. He says that those in power and those who cover those in power are perfectly content to continue to throw chum in the water to get us all wound up and diving at one another's throats and gnashing of teeth, but we're not actually really getting to the substantive issues at hand because we can't, because asking questions is problematic for most of these people who are actually in control, and that's very, very small groups of people who control the information flow in this country. And so he says, I've partnered with Twitter to change that dynamic. Now, you say, right on, Tucker. And, Elon Musk deserves a lot of the credit here, of course. Somebody asked me, I don't understand this, though. Like, what's in it for Tucker? Is he doing this purely, to be benevolent? I said, well, there's a couple of things at play for Tucker. Number one, we learned Tucker's still technically under contract from Fox. Tucker's not, he's not on the air, but Tucker is still in the midst of in media often, when you have a contract and you're swiftly terminated, particularly if there might be a legal battle ahead, they usually pay out the term of your deal. I don't know how long the term of his deal is, but from what I'm given to understand from people that know, Tucker is still receiving a paycheck. So even though he's not on the air, his checks are still clearing from Fox. So, number one, it's not like he's, in the unemployment line. Tucker's fine. Does that mean, though, that he's doing this for free for Elon? Doubtful. My guess is, somebody asked me this, how's Tucker making money? Is he doing this for free? I said, I doubt it. This is where Elon comes in. My guess is, my hunch, is that Elon and Tucker formed a partnership a while ago and started talking about this as a possibility. Elon's no dummy. He knows the eyeballs Tucker brings. And certainly when the opportunity presented itself, they talked, and Elon said, what would it take for you to produce a show here? Remember what he did with the Daily Wire as well. He partnered with them, and they decided to start broadcasting their content there. And it's the most watched documentary now ever, Matt Walsh's What is a Woman? Now, this, again, 53 million views as I speak to you now, in less than 24 hours. Folks, that's eyeballs. That's a lot. And this is a legitimate program. That monologue was straight ahead Tucker Carlson from Fox. It was everything that he would have done on Fox. 53 million views. Need I remind you that at his height, at his apex, which was the most successful show on cable news, he had 50 million fewer viewers than he got since 5 o'clock yesterday. On a great night, his best night, was just a little over 3 million viewers on Fox. So what am I saying here? The Fox people are, I imagined them, I said to a friend of mine last night, I imagined them at the end of one of my favorite books when I was a younger person, and well before I got interested in talk radio. I was interested in the late night wars between Leno and Letterman and who was going to take over for Carson. There was this book called The Late Shift written by Bill Carter, and they made a really campy movie out of it. And it was all about Letterman moving to CBS and Leno taking over for Carson, and the NBC people staying loyal to Leno and kind of passing over Letterman. And ultimately, they got in a big fight with Letterman and his agent, got him out of his deal at NBC, and they let him go to launch his own show at CBS. And the end of the film they made about it, it has the NBC executives watching the press conference of David Letterman walking across the street and having this big rollout at CBS that they were creating a brand new late night show to compete against the Tonight Show slot, which for a short period of time kicked the Tonight Show's butt. Letterman went across the street to CBS. It didn't last long, but for, the first year or something, Letterman actually dominated late night versus Johnny Carson's old Tonight Show. And the end of that film has the executives at NBC, pouring a scotch or something, and they're sitting there at the table sipping, and they're watching this Letterman press conference, and they're saying, did we make a mistake? Oh, God, didn't we make a mistake? And I said to this friend of mine last night, I go, that movie, that scene delighted me even as a kid. I knew then I couldn't stand suits in broadcasting. I knew then. Letterman taught me to just loathe suits in broadcasting. I have a fundamental mistrust of everyone in media management. To this day. Or Howard Stern's Private Parts, if you want. Go there with pig vomit. I don't like media executives on balance. I just don't trust them. I don't think they've ever understood the business of actually broadcasting and connecting with people. I've never thought it. They are revenue driven exclusively, and they don't understand broadcast product. They don't understand making shows. They don't understand connecting with audiences. They just understand charts and graphs and data points. And as such, they behave and govern that way. So I kind of have this special fondness for needling executives and watching executives pay for their ridiculous decisions that are purely budget-based. And I was imagining the Murdochs last night as Tucker posted this video to Twitter, as they tell themselves, I'm sure it'll be fine, as they settle their lawsuit with Dominion and decide it's better for them at Fox to just part ways with Tucker. Better he be gone. We can do without him. We'll be fine. And then watching as the tens of millions of views kept racking up as Tucker's video on Twitter continued to pile up more and more viewers. I kept wondering, were the Murdoch brothers watching this going, did we make a terrible mistake? Should we? Was there any amount of money that we probably should have just paid to suffer through it and keep him? Because was this a terrible mistake? And the answer is, of course, yes. Yes, Fox News just made a colossal mistake, and I'm here to tell you that what we just saw last night has fundamentally changed the business of this business forever. I believe we're watching the beginning of a new... This is the stagecoach sees the passenger train coming and goes, we'll be fine. Keep building stagecoaches, boys. We're living in that moment with media. So back to Elon. I think my guess is he probably said, hey, Tucker, the floor is yours. Will you make programming for me, for Twitter? And he says, sure thing. I'm going to need some staff. I'm going to need some help. And they say, sure thing. Now, I don't know if it's based on clicks and views, if it's a revenue sharing kind of thing. I don't know if it's just a flat, you're a contract laborer. What's hilarious is Fox is so short-sighted. They never anticipated this. So Tucker is not precluded legally from making this program for Twitter because short-sighted, again, go back to the pencil net geeks in broadcast, they aren't thinking. They're small thinkers. All the contracts they drew up with Tucker were, well, you can't go to CNN, you can't go to MSNBC, you can't go to Newsmax, you can't go to the radio, you can't. And he's like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm going to Twitter. Oh, hell, we didn't think of that. Get the boys on and legal. We got to get all these new contracts. So I guarantee everybody at Fox now has had their contracts rewritten or there will be addendums added. And they're going to make all their on-air talent from this day forward sign documents that say if they part ways with Fox, they're not going to be able to go start a new digital program on Twitter. Tucker has changed the business model in doing this. So he's not only collecting a check from Fox, he's still making the shows that he would have always made on Fox, now being seen by tens of millions more than ever would have watched Fox. Keep in mind the people watching this are people that don't even own televisions anymore. They don't watch cable. They don't have DirecTV. They don't stream. They don't watch traditional cable at all. So there are tens of millions of people seeing Tucker that never even saw him on Fox at all. They don't even know who he is. People are streaming him on their phone now. Who's this Tucker guy? They would never have watched Fox, but they're watching him. And this was not an overtly political piece that he aired. And I'm going to get into some of the content because it matters actually what he said, but I wanted to talk about the business of this first. This is not an overtly political thing, and I would guess that Elon said, here's some cash, do the thing. And critical to note is Tucker said, Twitter said we can come here and do what we want. If that should change, I'm out of here. Nobody said that. He made that very specifically plain in his first broadcast. If the dynamic changes where I'm told what to say or do, I'm gone. So that's important. Number one. But why did Elon do this? He hired a broadcast professional. And this, I'm going to sound a bit like a snob here, Fast Eddie. You're going to have to forgive me. I readily admit this is going to sound like some snobbery.
Bring it on, Chris.
I understand that the media landscape is changing and everything's going digital, and that's fine. And I understand there are people on YouTube that have hundreds of thousands of followers, and fine, all fine. But there is still skill involved in mass media. To present a product to a mass audience still requires skill and some polish. To become mass marketable, to become palatable to advertisers, to become long-term viable, you need some professionalism. You need professional people who know what they're doing. I appreciate Guerrilla, and I'm not saying that you can't be successful if you're not a pro. I don't mean that. But Elon has calculated, I want the biggest star from broadcast, traditional broadcast, on my platform. And that's what Tucker is. He's the biggest star in broadcasting. He's done this for decades. He's a professional communicator. That's important. Being a professional communicator is important. I think you're going to see Elon and people like Elon continue to hire away professional, trained, long-tenured media pros. That's what I think he's doing. He's building a media company. Part two of this, to back up what I'm saying, Elon is building a media company here. This is no longer people firing shots at one another on Twitter. He's not thinking small ball. He's not thinking about people's pithy little comments about politics on Twitter. That's not what Elon's thinking. Elon is thinking, I've just created a new Fox News. You understand? Like, this is big and it's different. What we're watching is something much bigger than, what I'm tweeting or your observation about the politics of the day or what. It's so much bigger. He's creating a Fox News lineup. I would imagine that it wouldn't be too terribly long before we start seeing a regularly scheduled lineup of broadcast pros offering their own shows. And remember, he tweeted, if you follow on Twitter, he tweeted last night, right after this thing exploded, Tucker's post, he said, I'd love people of all stripes to come here and start doing their shows. If you're interested, basically, let me know. He put out an all call. So I think if Keith Olbermann, for instance, wanted to start doing a show, I bet you money Elon Musk would sit down with Keith Olbermann and let him do his own show just like Tucker just did last night, and he would be wise to do so. Because for as crazy as Keith Olbermann is, he's a professional broadcaster. Now, the other component of this business model is, remember who he hired as the CEO? Back to that. I didn't forget my place. I kind of made fun of the politics of the hire. She comes from Comcast, NBC Universal. This woman he hired to be the CEO was what? Do you remember? Remember specifically what her forte was? What she did for NBC Universal?
She was like top sales dog, right? Like she was the top person in sales.
Bingo. She ran their revenue division. She was in charge of making sales for NBC Universal. So Elon is partnering with professional broadcasters, and he has hired as his CEO a professional media salesperson, for want of a better term. So you see what he's done? That's what we're watching. That's what this story really is. This is Elon Musk building a media platform on something called Twitter, which makes me laugh because 14 years ago when this thing was a thing and starting to come on, I used to laugh and say, real men don't tweet, and this is ridiculous, and this will never last, and why the hell do I want to watch people tweeting about their breakfast this morning? And I thought Twitter was the most narcissistic, silly thing. I dismissed it. I said, I'll never use it. And now we sit here today with Elon Musk owning it, Tucker Carlson, the most famous, biggest name in broadcasting, on it, with more to come, I suspect. A woman who sold NBC Media nationally, NBC Universal, will now be their CEO. And now what we're watching, I predict, is Twitter going from this very small, insular thing created by leftists to a potential media empire. And it's happening right now under our feet. It's exciting, and it's amazing, and it's stunning. And it was nothing I saw coming. I don't know about you, but it was nothing I saw coming. But that's the genius and the big thinking of Elon Musk.
Chris, think about it. Chuck Todd is leaving Meet the Press. I don't like these people. I'm just saying he's just left Meet the Press.
Well,
Rachel Maddow is down to one show a week. Both of those people were at NBC.
Yeah. So it could, you're exactly right. It's very plausible that they could show up and do shows just like this on Twitter. And who's in the catbird seat if that happens? Elon Musk. Who's brilliant? Elon Musk is not loyal to our politics, and none of us should expect him to be. He just wants the best products to get the most eyeballs. He doesn't care where they come from. And in a way, isn't that beautiful? And isn't that refreshing? And back to Tucker's monologue. Manipulated by lies, silenced by taboos, small groups of people controlling what you talk about. Well, Elon has now changed that quickly. Hey there, it's Chris, back on the phone with my dentist and friend Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, Pennsylvania, just off the Blue Route with new technology. You have not just new associates, but they brought new technology into the business to make it a little easier for patients.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time in dentistry. We have now introduced a three-dimensional x-ray called a CBCT scan in our office, which allows us to diagnose and things earlier for patients. My daughter is placing a lot of implants in the past had referred out. It's now being done in-house. And we also, we've been using dental or computer scanners for taking impressions for crowns for about the last 2 to 3 years. We now have introduced the next step, which is a milling machine, and we can now make crowns in the office. Things can be completed in the same day as opposed to having a temporary crown put on and 3 weeks later coming back and having a permanent crown put on. It's really a game changer, and it's a time saver for our patients to not have to make multiple visits to the office.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. You know, the left told the world that Elon Musk was an evil fascist, right? And now they're going to have to crawl back to him and kiss his ring, ultimately. What he's doing is ultimately setting himself up to be a media king. They can't talk about this, though. It's fascinating to watch media today ignore the biggest media story in the world. They can't talk about it because, one, Elon is evil. He overpaid, ha, 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 ha. This was their world. Twitter was their universe of thought control and mind control and message control. He bought it. He busted up their monopoly. Now he's turning it into a media empire that is rivaling and embarrassing them. And they're ignoring it. He overpaid for their censorship factory. They laughed, and now he has the last laugh. Free speech is having a very good week with Matt Walsh's film and Tucker crushing it on views. This is a huge, it's only Wednesday. In 3 days, some of the biggest seismic shifts in the way people are consuming media has happened, and you should take note. We're living history at the moment. It really is remarkable. I'm not sure everybody fully understands it. I know the people on cable news do. I guarantee you MSNBC, CNN, and Fox are sitting there watching this going, oh, crap. I think it's delightful. You know, it's like the PGA live people merging yesterday. You know, Trump predicted this. Did you see this? Trump, a year ago at least, called this out. In fact, I think I'll get to that in a minute. I don't mean to distract myself, but Trump saw that coming from downtown. These Saudis, they start this golf league, and they steal away some of the most premier players and names in the game, and they pay them $1 gazillion. And they were losing money. But they knew what they were doing. They were playing the long game. They were rivaling the PGA. And the PGA puffed their chest out and said, you aren't the PGA. Just like Fox said, you're not Fox, Elon Musk. Who needs Tucker Carlson? Fox News is the PGA. Except Fox News is not behaving smartly like the PGA did. I think there's actually some interesting and parallel stories. Remember everybody was thumping their chests on the PGA side saying, I'll never play for the Saudis. I'll never play for those human rights abusers. Trump went out there and said, hey, morons, everybody that went over there and took their money, they're rolling in dough, and you're going to be sorry because eventually they're going to merge and you're going to get none. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. The PGA just said, if we can't beat them, join them. The Saudis knew they weren't going to be beaten. They have infinite sums of money. They were just going to, this was the long play. So now they've created this global golf alliance that will never be rivaled again. The PGA said, uncle. They sat down with the Saudis and said, all right, how do we strike a deal here? And they said, what took you so long? And so now they've created this amazing golf league that will travel the world and will make gazillions of dollars that they will share together. And so the Saudis played the long game and won. Just like Elon is playing the long game and won. And traditional media people say, Twitter, I'm not doing a show on Twitter. Well, Tucker had 53 million views. The golfers, the players who went to play for Live, got gazillions of dollars, while others sat and puffed their chests up and said, I'm never going to. Okay. And now what do you get? Nothing. So all these PGA players who didn't join Live, they're furious. Because guys like Mickelson, who are the others? Like Koepka, didn't he?
Yeah, Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, Patrick Reed, Bryson DeChambeau.
Sums of money. They took sums of money, Eddie, that no professional player could ever earn in a million years, right? I mean, they could never earn that kind of money, those sums of money from the PGA that they took from LIV.
No, absolutely not. No.
But now that this merger happened yesterday, now they will never, I mean, anybody who said, I'll never join LIV, how short-sighted they were, they will never see that money again. So naturally, if you're a PGA guy, you're furious. Because you think you held out on principle. And people like Trump are going, you're a moron, principle, schmincible. You should have taken the cash while the cash was good, man. No one's going to. Phil Mickelson was a genius. Instagram has reinstated Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I guess they kicked him off for a time. I didn't hear that, but I guess. And I know he's joined Elon Musk in a Twitter Spaces deal. There's heavy interest in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. People asking me, can we get him on? I'm sure you're working on it, Fast Eddie, but look, the guy is in demand, and I'm a conservative, so it's not as though we agree with everything the man has to say politically. He's just become an interesting guy who lots of people are chasing after. So we're one of many. Not that we would be a priority for him, but we are looking into it. I am confident, yes?
Yeah, he just sent his press team sent a note. Thank you for your interest in interviewing Mr. Kennedy. We have all the information we need for your interview request. Right now, we have more requests for interviews than he can accommodate.
Yeah, I haven't any doubt. Fascinating guy, though, and a real... Look, Stephen A. Smith? You heard what Stephen A. Smith said, yeah? About the Democrats and supporting Biden? Said time to move on. Listen to a little of that. No? Okay, later. Let's go to this. Oh, we have it? All right.
Somebody's got to say it, so I'm going to say it. We need a new president in 2024. We need a new president. Now, when we saw what we saw the other day, Biden handing out diplomas to graduates at the Air Force Academy in Colorado, and we saw him fall. You'll see it right here. Watch him. He tripped over a sandbag. Let me be very, very clear about where I'm going with this. That could happen to anybody. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, Whoopi said so.
I've tripped and bust my behind on several occasions, sometimes running up the stairs. It happens. Mm-hmm. It's not the end of the world. It's not evidence that he's just not all there. But he is 80. He'll be 81 by the end of his term, approaching 82. And there have been times where you've looked at him and you said, I don't know. I'm not calling for him to be removed from office. I'm not calling for the 25th Amendment to be invoked so Kamala Harris could take over the presidency and all of this other stuff. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not trying to disrespect our president. I mean, I like some of the things that he did as a senator. Remember, he was a part of that crime bill in the 90s. He was one of those people that was calling folks predators, even though the Congressional Black Caucus obviously had no problem with him taking that position at that time, which is a different subject altogether. I am in no way trying to disrespect our president. I voted for him. And based on some of the leading candidates on the right side, I'd probably be forced to vote for him again because they scared the living hell out of me with some of the things that they're preaching about. But I wouldn't like it. Because, ladies and gentlemen, without trying to engage in any kind of ageism at all, because I don't believe in it, there does come a point in time where there are certain jobs you don't need. It's not that you don't need to be working. It's not that you don't need to be living your life. It's not that you don't need to be living a very vibrant lifestyle or anything like that. But there are responsibilities that are far, far, far more extensive than, let's say, the typical 9 to 5 that somebody in their 80s may not need to be doing. I think the presidency is one of them.
All right.
I do.
That's Stephen A. Smith. By the way, where did he deliver this little monologue of his? Was it on ESPN?
This was on his podcast, the Stephen A. Smith podcast.
Okay, good. I was going to say, this surely would not, even as far as left as ESPN has gone, I can't imagine they would approve of that monologue. Okay. Yeah. The Republican alternative still scares him. Just curious, as a black guy who makes race his priority, what about black existence in the United States has been bettered under Democrats versus what people like Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump have done for the black community writ large? Employment, the economy, for starters. Who's bettered the black existence in this country? Republicans or Democrats? Just as a historical track record, I would ask Stephen A. Smith. And I think it's demonstrably true. We all know. Starting with Lincoln and moving forward. All right, back to the story at hand. Phil Klein, our great friend, founder of something called the Amistad Project. Phil used to be the Attorney General of the great state of Kansas. Phil and I became friends years and years ago, and we hadn't been in touch for a while, and then suddenly Phil was kind of thrust back in the spotlight during the 2020 election, at least my spotlight. I didn't know where Phil had landed for a while, and then all of a sudden the story popped. The story of Jesse Morgan, a guy who was contracted to haul mail for the United States Postal Service. He steps forward after the 2020 election and said, I was involved in driving a truckload of ballots, hundreds of thousands of ballots to his estimation, pallets of them, from New York to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And then the truck went missing, and he was basically told to buzz off. Well, new news this week. Phil Klein represented the driver, Jesse Morgan. Never did find that truck. Never did learn where that wound up. Phil's back in the news. This story is back in the news, so we bring Phil Klein back to update us on what we've learned and what we know. Including what it sounds like the United States Postal Service has basically confirmed this story now. It's not just kookery anymore out there, Phil. Welcome back.
It's good to be with you.
Is that about right? Even the Postal Service has basically given a tacit admission that this is, in fact, the way it went down?
Well, not actually, Chris. What they have done is they've confirmed a lot of the strange happenings, the facts surrounding Jesse's story. And then they demonstrated they didn't get to the bottom of it. Okay. They haven't answered some of the key questions. So, as you might recall, Jesse Morgan had a regular route that took him from Pennsylvania to Bethpage. He'd pick up mail at a facility that only handled parcels, was not designed to handle flats like ballots, and then would transport those parcels back to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and then back to Lancaster with no ties to Philadelphia. Now, this is really important to understand because as they pack his truck in Bethpage, since he's going to Harrisburg, and these are big parcels. In other words, there's what they call gaylords, which are about 7 feet high, 4 feet by 4 feet boxes that are loaded with parcels. And he's got about 25 of them on his truck. So it's important to put the Harrisburg mail on at the back of the truck because that's where he's going first. And they unload that, and then the Lancaster parcels are towards the tractor or in the back of the trailer because that's where he's going last. So what he says is he's taken these things and he thinks it's weird because he sees all of these large gaylords full of completed ballots with return addresses and so forth, and has a conversation about how that's odd, and the person up there at Bethpage agrees with him. And then on October 21st, he drives across state lines from Bethpage through New Jersey into Harrisburg, where he's not allowed to unload his truck. Now, this investigation by the Inspector General's office confirms that he didn't unload in Harrisburg, and that he then went on to Lancaster, just as Jesse says. He was ordered into Lancaster. And in Lancaster, it confirms that, and this is really strange, they unloaded the Lancaster or the Harrisburg stuff, which was at the back of the truck where they, have to unload first. And they then took off Lancaster. And then the Harrisburg stuff, all they say is that it ends up where it's supposed to be. They don't detail where all of this went or exactly what it was. And the trailer that Jesse says he drove, which they say he didn't drive. Now, Jesse says he did drive that trailer. He remembers specifically. They found it. Its end route was in Philadelphia. It ended up in Philly about the same time that there is circumstantial evidence indicating that these ballots ended up in that area as well, either in Delaware County or in Philadelphia or both. The investigation also shows this. It shows the level of privatization in our election services. And there's some legitimacy to it, but the weakness of the investigation is they identified that there was a printer up in New York that printed over 650,000 ballots to be shipped to election offices in Philadelphia. And they could not confirm how those ballots were sent to Philadelphia. And they didn't. They also indicate that all of this information was provided to the Assistant United States Attorney in Pennsylvania, who was ordered by the Justice Department to turn it over to the Pennsylvania Attorney General. The Pennsylvania Attorney General, who was highly critical of Trump and predicted that Trump would lose the election in Pennsylvania, decided not to do any further investigation. So a lot of the facts about what Jesse had to say were confirmed, and the questions were not answered by this investigation. And the investigation was only about 3 weeks. It was rushed, and the report was finalized, and it's taken about 3 years for it to come out.
It is demonstrably true and clear and proven now and confirmed by the Postal Service at least that Jesse was not involved in the physical removal of these things. He doesn't know where they went, and that was abnormal. They did confirm that, right? I mean, or is that normal?
They confirmed that,
yeah.
And they also confirmed this. It's real interesting. They confirmed that there were ballots in this Bethpage facility which should not have any ballots.
Really?
It's not used for that. But it didn't go any further.
And how about ballots printed versus ballots filled out? That seems like an important distinction, too.
It didn't. All it says is that many of the people that they talked to could not remember or could not corroborate. Now, there's a lot of redactions in the report, and I can't tell if they spoke with. We had a whistleblower up in Bethpage who confirmed Jesse's story about these ballots being loaded on his truck. I cannot tell you whether they spoke with that person or not. That information was provided to him. So it's full of redactions, which make it very difficult to understand the breadth of it. But I can tell you just by looking at it, they didn't do what was necessary to get to the bottom of the questions. They basically said we couldn't corroborate. Now, this is what's real interesting about this, Chris, and we see that nationally. We still see the media and our government putting the burden, like it's some type of litigation, on people who are questioning the 2020 election. Well, we're past litigating the 2020 election. Where we are now is, did our government do its job? And that puts the burden on the government to show it did right, and it did not. But you still have this resistance to look at what happened, and you have to look at what happened to be able to fix it. Let me give you a simple example. Today in America and in 2024, most likely a majority of our ballots are going to move through central postal processing centers. Now, before, when people voted or people handled handwritten ballots at the count, every state in the nation had a common sense law that said both parties must be present anywhere ballots are handled. Now, that's not happening today. Some of because they privatized it, and also because these ballots now move through central processing centers of the U.S. Postal Service, which determines whether the ballots are valid by their stamp. Now, why don't we have parties watching the central processing centers? Why aren't they opened up so we can see it? Now, this is not to impugn your mail carrier, but the Postal Service has a union. Those unions are highly political, and they support a particular candidate. It just makes sense to make them transparent. We haven't done that. We're not even discussing that. We're not addressing the problems of the 2020 election because there's one side that has weaponized the Department of Justice and other areas of law enforcement to intimidate anybody who raises questions about the 2020 election. So there's a lot of concerns here that are not being addressed that this report reveals to be legitimate concerns.
Phil Klein is with the Thomas More Society, the Amistad Project, a branch of the Thomas More Society. And
Chris, I'm sorry, I'm not affiliated with Thomas More right now. So I just wanted to mention that they're a great organization, but we're not with Thomas More.
Okay, who are you with these days? It's been a week of people correcting me their affiliation, so you're literally the third person this week that's told me they're no longer doing the thing I thought they were doing. What are you doing now?
Well, we're still doing the same thing, but it's the Amistad Project.
Okay.
And we have several joint partnerships with various groups.
Okay.
So
you're still representing Jesse, or no?
Well, Jesse's a friend. There's not a formal representation. There's not any litigation going on.
Okay, got it. So bottom line here is we have a two-pronged issue as I see it when it comes to our elections and physical ballots. Number one, it's the early collection of ballots. Democrats have figured out how to ballot harvest. But then a wholly separate issue is chain of custody after those ballots have been collected. So those are two separate issues, but equally concerning for those of us that want transparency.
Absolutely. And the chain of custody is not followed. And the management of those ballots, see, it used to be the chain of custody was real simple. The ballots were in the possession of government. And government had restrictions that required it to allow both parties to watch. It's also subject to open records requests and so forth and legislative oversight. But now much of it moves through the private sector. And you have in the urban core, you have government officials, mainly leftist government officials, hiring private companies to manage ballots. And there in Pennsylvania, they did a little trick which was quite remarkable, supported by Zuckerbucks. And Zuckerbucks is the tip of the iceberg. We're talking billions of dollars when you pull in organized labor and so forth. What they did is they set up satellite offices under the law, which were really like polling places.
Right.
And then they argued that Pennsylvania law, which says that a Republican and Democrat must be in the presence of to watch the handling of ballots in polling places, even though there's new satellite offices do the same thing as polling places. They said, look, the statute doesn't say satellite offices. Therefore, we don't have to allow Republicans in. And your partisan Supreme Court agreed. So they created a nice niche in the law where they created something not called polling places so they could exclude one party from watching. That's the type of stuff that happened in 2020.
And I know
caused.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I know you're not one for conjecture if you can't prove it, but I mean, do you have reason to believe then that what we're talking about is a physical inflated count in ballots, in votes? Maybe you don't have to attribute it to anybody, but is there a real question about the volume of physical ballots that were injected into the system in 2020, in your mind?
Yes, absolutely. And I will attribute it. It was leftist nonprofits teamed with organized labor that rewrote the rules and or violated the rules with impunity that caused hundreds of thousands of ballots to be counted that shouldn't. You go to Wisconsin, for example, where the Wisconsin Supreme Court since 2020 has said, and this state was decided by 11,000 votes, it said that drop boxes were illegal. Well, we could have predicted that. Wisconsin law said that absentee ballots have to be delivered to the clerk. Well, a box is not a person. Yeah. And that's what the Supreme Court said. It was very, very clear. But despite that, at the urging of leftist nonprofits funded by leftist billionaires, the Wisconsin Election Commission allowed drop boxes. And then Zuckerbucks put a drop box on every street corner in Democrat strongholds, where in Republican strongholds, for example, in Pennsylvania, there was one drop box in the counties that Trump won every 1,157 square miles. Well, in Delaware County, there was one for every 4 square miles. Mm-hmm. So drop boxes were not legal in the 2020 election in Wisconsin. Additionally, the Wisconsin Supreme Court said, look, we have this requirement under the law that a person who sends in an absentee ballot must photocopy their ID. That's common sense because you can't verify the ID if you're not there when they complete the ballot. So you must photocopy your ID unless you're, quote, indefinitely confined. Well, again, at leftist urging, the Wisconsin Election Commission said, well, you're indefinitely confined because it's COVID. Now, we actually investigated this, Chris. We looked to see if these people were indefinitely confined, people who submitted absentee ballots and claimed they were, and we saw them partying on Halloween from their Facebook page.
Yeah.
They weren't indefinitely confined in the election. They weren't even close to it. The Wisconsin Supreme Court said that was an unlawful order. The ballots of people claiming to be indefinitely confined in Wisconsin jumped from about 50,000 to over 250,000 in that election.
So
where studies show most of those votes went to Biden. So yes, illegality, organized labor teaming with leftist nonprofits infused hundreds of thousands of ballots that otherwise wouldn't have been.
Phil, do you think this is something I've always been kind of hung up on? Do you think all these ballots illegally infused in the system, can they still be technically, if you forensically audited the physical ballots, can they still be physically traced to a real person? Because this has always been a sort of a distinction that I've tried to make, and maybe it's one that doesn't warrant a distinction. I don't know. Like a difference without a distinction, I don't know. But to me, it would be sloppy to introduce maybe millions of ballots in multiple states that you can't tie back to a legitimate name or person, right? I mean, so
it's a great question, Chris, okay. and it is actually one of the core issues in election integrity, and that is the chain of custody of the ballots, which did not occur in 2020, quite frankly. And that's why we have laws, prophylactic laws, that prevent us from losing that chain of custody, which were eviscerated in 2020. And to answer your question, it's almost next to impossible now because of what we've done. I'll give you an example. In Wayne County, which is Detroit, Michigan, there the Republican election commissioners wanted the vote not to certify the election because over 70% of the precincts reporting in Wayne County could not match up ballots.
Jeez.
They couldn't match up the number of ballots with the number counted or the particular who voted. And so 70% plus of the precincts didn't match. Now, this is really wild when you think about it. This is how poor our laws are and how they're not designed for today. They were threatened with arrest by Michigan officials who said the law required that they certify, that they had no discretion. They were engaged in what's called a ministerial function under the law. So if they voted what they believed, they'd be prosecuted. So we've delegated authority of oversight to local officials who are told that if they exercise any discretion and don't agree with what the local bureaucrats tell them, they'll be arrested. That's election law in America.
So
today.
given what you found, Phil Klein, I'll close with this question. As we look at a 2024 election, I ask of just your general opinion. Romney McDaniel, who runs the GOP, the Trump campaign, the DeSantis campaign, any other Republican who may or may not be successful in challenging Biden. Do they get this? Do they understand what you found? Do we have a remedy to this? You know, I talked with Sean Spicer. He said, listen, this is not a GOP thing per se. It's a state-by-state thing. You know, again, I don't like leaving people despairing, but I mean, this sounds like a mess. Can Republicans overcome this?
It is. Well, we Republicans can overcome it simply because America doesn't believe, I think, in the policies that are being pushed by the Biden administration. So, but you have to overcome probably a 4 to 5 point advantage in swing states that's built into the urban core.
So this is what Newt said. Sorry to interrupt, but Newt said we've got to win by such margins, even with what you've described, the volume of victory for Republicans would be too great to cheat through what you've just described. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's part of it.
Okay.
But I do think that there are policy fixes, and it's in the hands of state legislatures, and it requires that they understand and act. And I think there's an opportunity, Chris, to a certain extent, of some bipartisanship here, not with the hardcore left part of the Democratic Party, but with the civil liberties part of the Democratic Party, the old Democratic Party that most Americans still believe exists, which is withering right now. They need to step up because it is common sense reform. You go back and it must be addressed because faith in elections is at dangerous points in America. It's fallen ever since the 2000 election of Bush v. Gore. And that's because we privatized elections with federal laws at that time and pushed much of the management into the private sector, which has no transparency. So we have to get back to core election concepts of transparency, accountability in the election. And we don't have that right now. There are laws that can be changed, and we're trying to encourage state legislatures to do it that will bring that back. But where you've got these highly partisan control, you're not going to see those changes. So we're trying to work through that. Part of it is the Republican Party needs to wake up to what's happening. I think it's starting to, but part of it is the law needs to be changed, or we're going to be right back here fighting one another after 2024.
Phil Klein, the Amistad Project. He's on Twitter, Phil D, as in dog, Phil D. Klein, if you'd like to follow him there. Pleasure to catch up, Phil. Thanks for updating us on this critically important issue for elections in this country. Thank you, my friend. Mike Lindell and MyPillow. What a great patriot. One guy that, for sure, everything he makes, everything he sells, you can guarantee not made in China. Nope. Not at all. Now, look, he does sell a delicious coffee. He obviously is not growing the coffee beans here. So, full disclosure, that's maybe one of the few things at MyPillow that you won't find domestically grown, but certainly packaged and shipped as our MyPillow and the coffee specifically, the pods, the ground, and the beans. We order them here and drink it at the office regularly. I'm enjoying some this morning, as a matter of fact. The MyPillow products, which I didn't own or possess any of them until this year, to be perfectly candid with you. And Mike and I partnered together to start talking about them, and so I ordered a few things. I ordered the Giza Dream sheets. I ordered that 3-foot body pillow that MyPillow makes. I sleep with it every night. I love it. As a side sleeper, it's the best. I rest my arm and elbow on it and put my knee up on it. It's like it gives great support if you're somebody that, is a side sleeper like I am. The MyPillow 2.0, here's the deal. You'll get up to 80% just by using my name as a promo code when you go to MyPillow.com and type Chris. But on the MyPillow 2.0 specifically, this is covered in a fabric that's heat dissipating, so it keeps you cooler all night long if you're somebody that kind of runs hot at night. You'll get a second MyPillow 2.0 for free if you use my name, Chris, when you order one. And the mattress topper, which listeners have told me is like reinvigorating your mattress. It's like a brand new mattress at a fraction of the price. Mike's going to ship you that mattress topper for free if you order it. It's also covered in that same 2.0 material to keep you cool all night long. So whether it's the Giza Dream Sheets, the MyPillow 2.0, the mattress topper, the blanket. We just ordered a new waffle woven blanket from MyPillow, and we love it. Dean loves his MyPillow dog bed. Yep, we're MyPillowed out at Stately Stigall Manor, and I hope you'll check it out too with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee on everything you order. I know you're going to be very, very satisfied with the MyPillow products. It's like a mall online there. Go to MyPillow.com or call 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056, and remember the promo code Chris to save big money. Got another edition of the Harumph Society coming out today. Been writing a lot about cultural Marxism, coming after faith, coming after family, coming after free markets. Been writing a lot about the media landscape changing dramatically. Hope you'll check it out if you are not a harumpher yet. I think you're going to enjoy it. I think we've made it a great value, I believe. $5 just a measly $5 a month for 12 editions of the newsletter monthly. That's 3 a week, which from what I'm told, most people say, Stigall, there's so much to read and consume. The only complaint that I get usually about the Harumph Society is I don't always have time to consume it, which, I understand, but we try to make it bite-sized for you. I try not to just inundate you. I usually write some thoughts. Some people have said they want more video. Some people say they prefer to read it. I've met people who say both. I like to read. Some people say I prefer to just listen or watch. So we try to do a little of both. We try to give you some previews of some interviews. For instance, some conversations you hear here on the show. Sometimes you'll hear them first there. Sometimes you'll hear complete conversations that we don't always have time to air in full here. So hope you'll check it out. We're awfully proud of it, and it has become a Substack bestseller, I'm proud to say, thanks to your support. And again, it's like everything else in this day and age where you have to consider where's the next job going to come from for those of us that value speaking freely. You can never be too careful. I don't know. I have no reason to think there's any reason whatsoever that I can't continue to speak freely where I sit today. But should that day ever arise, you like creating insurance policies, and we've done so, I think, at the Harumph Society. You can link to it going to chrisstigall.com. I wanted to briefly just play for you some comments from my friend Kevin Keatsman. Kevin is he's a podcast host who I got to know years ago. He was in an ownership group. I was on a different radio station than him, but we were under the same ownership group. He was a sports talk radio host in Kansas City. I was doing music at first and then started my news talk career with him as my next door neighbor. Great guy. I consider him a friend, and he's most well known for most of his career as a sports talk guy. But since he started doing a podcast, he got himself in trouble. In fact, Kevin got fired from his own radio station that he helped found, a very successful sports talk radio station. And the ownership group threw him over. You know why? Because he had the temerity to question Andy Reid's home life. His sports talk station was affiliated with the Kansas City Chiefs. Naturally, there's a lot of revenue tied to that, as you can imagine. And Kevin once said on his radio show that with one son who had sadly lost his life at training camp, as we know that story, while Andy Reid was still with the Philadelphia Eagles, and then his second son, Britt Reid, who it appears was drinking and partying on Chiefs property the night he got in a car and slammed into a car that was on the roadside and nearly killed a little girl in doing so, and is now going to serve some jail time. Kevin opined, Andy Reid's a decent guy. He's a hell of a coach, but I'm not so sure what kind of father he was. That got Kevin fired. And Kevin is effectively, in Kansas City media, he's blackballed because of that. So he started his own pod. Now, Kevin is one of the most prolific sports talk host in the country. He was very, very popular and well-liked. But that got him fired forever with one phone call from the Chiefs and gone. That's the power of the NFL. So Kevin's got this podcast he's doing now, and he's doing very well with it. And Kevin watches issues like speech pretty closely, and we're friends. We talk a lot. And I've been catching some flack from certain online commentary about something that I tweeted about Joe Biden when he fell over the sandbag last week. Something that I tweeted in particular that, and I get this from time to time, people say, that's how you claim to be a Christian. That's not very Christian what you say. I tweeted something flippant about, don't ask me to pity Joe Biden. I'm asked to pray for my leaders, and I do, but don't ask me to pity the guy. I don't feel sorry for him. He's a destructive menace to the country, and I'm not going to feel sorry for him. Well, as usual, my commentary is pithy, to the point, and cutting. That's what they really hate. But I got a lot of flack for that. What kind of Christian says something like that? Kevin, very kindly, on his podcast yesterday, had this to say about that, and I thought you should hear it because I appreciated it.
And Chris Stigall is a devout Christian now. He is and has been sober for a number of years. He has lost weight. He's just generally healthier. But he is, he's Christian now. He's openly and devoutly Christian. And he tweeted this. Tony's Kansas City has reprinted it because I didn't see it on his tweet. Chris Stigall tweeted, "I'm commanded to pray for our leaders, and I do. But don't ask me to pity them. I do not feel sorry for Joe Biden. I will never feel sorry for Joe Biden. I don't wish him harm, but I have not a tiny shred of sympathy for his destructive presidency. He can fall, trip, have surgeries, cough, catch COVID, and none of it negates his destruction." Wow. So some people are being critical of this, saying that that's not a very Christian attitude. And I think just the opposite. I do. I think you don't wish harm on somebody that's doing harm, which is the way Stigall views him. What he's saying is this man is harmful. This man does not deserve sympathy or pity. This is organized. It's outrageous. It's wrong what's going on. And as a Christian, I don't wish him harm, but I will not pity this man, and I will not feel sorry for him because of the destruction that he's part of. It's part of his doing, whether people are controlling him completely or what. I applaud Chris Stigall. Chris Stigall's a big thinker. He's a smart guy. He's a talented broadcaster, and I'm proud to call him a friend. And I support what he said there. Some people thought it was outrageous. I support that. I support that completely.
So that's from Kevin Keatsman's show yesterday called Kevin Keatsman Has Issues. I appreciated it as a personal matter from a friend, but I thought you should hear it too because, as usual, something I say that I think is rather innocuous becomes a thing to some people, and I just, rather than I opine about it, I thought I'd let somebody else comment on it. I think a lot about this stuff. I do. I watched this video. I don't know if you've seen it floating around out there. I just tweeted about it this morning. There's video out in California of, let me see if I can find it here quickly. I didn't intend to talk about it, but here we go. Hang on, bear with me. It's an Armenian group of folks, tweeted from the 1776 Project. An all-out brawl is underway outside the Glendale School Board meeting in Los Angeles between Armenian-American families angry at the school doing pride events and far-left protesters that have gathered to oppose them. And I don't know if you've seen this video, but these protesting parents are kicking the crap out of these woke pride people. And there's a part of me that delights in it. I hate admitting. And another part of me that's profoundly aware that this is exactly what evil wants, right? I do battle with it. I sincerely do. People who don't like me or this show won't believe me. but I think about this probably more than just about anything else these days. Normal people are not going to continue to accept the provocation forever. We're just not. But of course, the reaction to that, and what does that mean, leads to this sort of stuff. And it's ultimately what they want. I mean, they want the January 6th. They want the violence. They want the pictures because they want to frame us all as nasty, mean monsters, even though they're the provocateurs and even though they're the violent ones, and even though they light things on fire and loot. The rules are different for them than us. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And again, this was literally the last sermon my preacher preached on Sunday, coming into this week. Romans 12, 9 through 21. We're only responsible for our own actions, he said. And so if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with others. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with others. I am praying on that and thinking more about that more deeply than ever right now. I really am. What does that mean? What does that look like? What as believers, what as Christians are we to do here when perpetually accosted and perpetually assaulted? Perpetually, the destruction is real and purposeful. We're called names. This husk, this shell of a man that we're pretending is president said, yeah, you like your guns? You like your Second Amendment? Better have an F-16. You want to take us on. That kind of stuff, this constant, we're the bigots if we don't want our kids mutilated in surgeries to have their genders affirmed. People of faith are hated. But John 15:18, this is scriptural. Jesus said it. If the world hates you, just know they hated me well before they hated you. You ain't got nothing on me, kid, says Christ. It's true. And when you look at it that way, it's like, it's not exactly, we don't live in Rome exactly during Christ's time. I mean, and so there's a part of me that says, okay, look, as bad as things feel, it's been a lot worse. And that's Christ's message to us through Scripture is, look, it's the world who hates believers, but we're not sanctioned to hate others. There's nothing in Scripture that sanctions that for us. Doesn't mean be a doormat. It doesn't mean lay down. It doesn't mean you don't stand up, and doesn't mean you don't defend. But again, this is sort of a running theme this week. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with others. And I think that means we continue to speak and speak freely and fight for free speech. And that's why it's so important that people like Tucker are doing what they're doing. Going on platforms like Twitter. It's why people like Elon Musk are so critically important. It's why these free speech platforms like this one and my parent company at Salem, I have every reason to believe that they are committed to the same principles. And we must throw our full support behind these entities who are willing to give voice to those of us who still have one, to challenge authority and conventional wisdom and ask questions and report truths and talk about things that other people in polite society say are taboo. It is, as Tucker said, made a note of that. We're manipulated by lies. We're silenced by taboos. Oh, you can't say that. What are you, some sort of bigot? You can't say that. Places like Twitter, places like this, there can be no such thing as you can't say that. There can't be. Because when we get to a place where you can't say that, you can't say that, you can't say that, all that's left, all that ultimately comes of that is street violence, physical violence. And I'm not entirely sure that's not their end game, but anyway. What gives you hope, what gives me hope ultimately, one is, yes, Christ's message and warning, if the world hates you, know that they hated me well before they hated you. But again, our peace, our strength comes through speech. And so if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with others.
The Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.